Okay, so in one of our previous conversations, I think you raised such a really nice way of possibly looking into the videos and that we're doing that relate to the mind map instead of digging to all of it, in terms of its depth, but possibly say, let's think of a situation where I might sit with a person for only 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and I wanted to use the mind map in a way that was helpful to them, meaningful to them, in whatever situation they were finding themselves, whether it was a difficulty or a question or a pursuit, whatever it might be. And I certainly want to try that. I think
Okay.
the idea is a good one. Let's give it a go.
Okay. So let's say I come to you and I say, well, I'm lonely. I'm looking for a partner. And I have always made less of what I'm looking for. And so I ask you, is there a soulmate? Is there one person is there a recipe book? Should I write a list of things? Is there really something that should separate the keeper from the rest?
Well, my immediate thought would be without the mind map is, I'm going to give opinion here, right? And that's my perspective on that. And that would be along the lines, I think that there are definite markers for somebody who may well be a keeper. In other words, I would translate that somebody I'd be committed to because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know how things are going to turn out. The question is, are we able to identify certain qualities and characteristics in somebody that would allow me to say, I'm going to run the risk of committing to this person in the hope that we are going to enjoy life as better together. So I think that there are definitely markers for that. But when you sort of went through it and said, I've always made lists and these kinds of things, I think fundamentally, one of the things the mind map is all about, and it says here, it's a self-discovery guide for a deeper understanding of self. And in brackets, it says, and others, and the world as it is. The reason I point to that is because most often when we're looking at other people, the inclination is to make lists as to what they should be. Whereas my encouragement, if a person is lonely and looking for some sort of companionship, they start with themselves, which is where the mind map always begins, is you can't change somebody else. You can influence them. You don't even know who the other person is yet, but you're making lists of who they should be. I think we are much better positioned to start saying, let me look at what I would want to be or what somebody else might be looking for in a partner. And does that sort of fit with me? And I'm talking about not pretense, but authentically, who am I? How well do I know myself? What kind of partner would I like to be? And one can actually start working on making a list of who you want to be and what you want to contribute before you start making lists of what the other person brings. So I
Okay.
begin there and say, I think it's always helpful to begin with yourself.
Okay. So let's merge. I'm going to be dating myself here.
That's okay.
Let's obviously, would I be dating the question is then, am I the person I would be dating?
Well, I'm not sure I would have gone that route, but no,
So
okay.
first, I should know myself.
Yeah. So and
If
here's what
I'm
we
not
want to do.
dateable, I don't think I can date.
And that would be fair. I think it's only fair. I think if there's something that the whole point of this is you recognize that you have something to offer. And we recognize
Sure.
that in the concept of better together here on, the section on relationships, the bottom line is the reason we call the perspective for life relationship component better together is because life is genuinely designed to be better together, better in community as a whole, but definitely better with a partner. And there are reasons for that. And of the reasons relate to this idea that we have limitations, which I refer to often in terms of limited resources of time and energy and money and potential and information and things we know. And all of these things, the bottom line is when we pool resources and we navigate life with a sort of a common goal, with a sort of a common direction, what we find is companionship in that particular situation really adds tremendous value to life experience. There are times when I've sat with people and they'd say, I've gone ahead and I've traveled and I've enjoyed something, but I can only imagine it would be so much better to enjoy with somebody else. So the bottom line is, I think the idea is the mind map would suggest to us that we are better in relationship. The problem is relationships are tremendously challenging because disagreement, which is inevitable amongst people, is what underlies all potential conflict. And the tendency is we tend to be selfish a lot of the time. We focus on what we want, whereas in a relationship, exactly to the point that I'm sort of pushing at the moment, is what am I willing to give? What am I willing to try and be? Well, what do people look for? Well, people look for, if we consider the foundational components of what makes for good relationships, intimate relationships, people are looking for security. People are looking for sensitivity and sincerity. So what do we get? Well, am I trustworthy? Am I honest? Am I willing to be and live out the things that I say that I am and say that I believe? In other words, am I capable of being authentic rather than trying to present something that is a trap or a means of catching somebody? But am I willing to present to somebody else who might be interested as clear and real a picture of me as possible so that they are free in many respects to decide, yes, this looks like somebody I would like to commit to or run the risk with, or this is somebody that I don't. So being trustworthy, open, and honest from the get-go is probably the first thing that I would be looking at to say, if you want to make a good choice and you want to give the other person the opportunity to make a good decision, let them be clear on what they're getting. And that would come back to, that first component of the Perspective for Life transformation system, making sense of me. So my question to the person would be, well, how well do you really know yourself? And how trustworthy and honest do you think you could be in terms of what you could offer and give to somebody else you might choose to live life with?
So I'm going to keep pressing on this. How I'm going on a date, and how would I be recognizing certain things?
Be more specific than that.
So obviously, I mean, trustworthy, authentic,
Was I on time?
empathic.
Right. So let's
Like
go with trustworthy.
there obviously is indications.
So I think trustworthiness is something that's not going to present itself overnight. So that's going to be over time, which I think one recognizes. Does this person behave consistently with what they say? I use this example. So say we sit down and I say to the person, I consider myself a very generous person, and that's fine. And the meal comes and I look at the bill and I'm like, okay, it was X amount. And I give this tiny, tiny little tip that the other person happens to see. Immediately they're going to be like, how's this generous? So in essence, what I'm saying is, does my behavior genuinely line up with the things that I'm telling the person about myself? So over time, the person can start identifying, says this, does this. I say this often. We say what we know, we do what we believe. If there's something that I want to know about somebody, I want to know what they believe. About what? About all of life. In other words, what do they consider to be factually real and true? Whether they're correct or not, or whether I'm correct or not, I'd like to know that they are people who are confident enough to live authentically enough on the basis of what they believe, with the humility to be able to change if they're shown to be wrong. So what do I want to be? Well, I'd like to be trustworthy. I'd like to be humble enough to, maybe be difficult to offend. So sense of humor. Well, I think people typically like people they can laugh with and people they can have fun with and things be light. Well, can I be that? Can I be somebody who's not pretending to find this person funny or clever, but, just real? I guess if you think about Perspective for Life, keep it real, keep it simple, keep it thoughtful, keep it going. Being real, in other words, being consistent with what I truly am, is probably the best thing that I could look at being as I meet with somebody else. And then if I'm making that list of myself, who is it that I want to be or who is it that I am? Try and find the areas of possibly weakness or the areas that I'm not particularly strong in that I might need to improve on in order to be a better partner. So again, consistent with our conversation, how can I be the best partner possible, even in anticipation of meeting somebody, rather than how can I be sharp and alert to what the best partner looks like? And I think that the more authentic we are, the more likely we are to go ahead and make it for the other person to be themselves. And again, that's probably going to take a bit of time for that to play out along the lines of what I'm talking about.
And the soulmate? Is there a soulmate, right?
I would say a soulmate is probably going to be somebody both of us, we collectively choose to say, you are my soulmate and I'm going to live with you like that. So I don't think that it is a predestined kind of fateful
One and only.
soulmate. No, I'm of the opinion, as you know very well, that any two people committed to wanting to care for and love the other one, and by love I mean sacrificially giving of themselves for the good of this other person, I think any two people who are willing to do that can make for a good relationship.
Okay. So I better start looking inwards first.
I guess that's exactly what I'd say. From the mind map, the idea is, again, a self-discovery guide. Who do I want to be a great partner before I start making lists of what
Okay.
the other might be?
So what I should ask, would I date myself? If not, then start working.
Again,
I'm working on the list.
yeah, I think that, again, it's just not sitting totally well with me, but I guess it's reasonable. Am I dateable? Am I
Yeah.
somebody who is companionship material? I like that.
Okay.
So,
Should we give it on that?
yeah, let's end on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.